Hello ladies and gentlemen. Now, I just recently had a terrible cutting experience. I'll grab the stone here. So this little crystal opal just wouldn't face. Bit of lightning ridge, acted like meant to be, wouldn't face, even though it looked so nice from the side of the bar. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to show off a special blade that I have to slice this up, and we're just going to slice it up in this direction. We're going to cut little strips like this, and why I'm going to do that is that I can keep that material now for little chips and do some inlay stuff. So this is a ring that Kev gave me quite a long time ago for cutting a stone for him, and he doesn't know this, but I don't wear rings. Well, he knows that part, I think. But what I do with this ring is when I've had a really bad, unfortunate cut and I'm feeling a bit down, I'll just put it on my finger and give it a little bit of a twirl. It's quite an incredible ring made with material from all around the country. And yeah, it always just gives me a little bit of hope. This ring to me just symbolizes how well each of the fields can perform. And it also shows me that even with the smallest piece of opal, I'm not entirely sure how big these little pieces are. Like here you can see a couple tiny little squares. They wouldn't be that deep. This ring isn't overly large, but you can make the most out of any material. Instead of throwing it in the bin, what I'm going to do is I am going to slice it up and keep those little slices for a project similar to this, maybe even just like this. I do want to try this. So that's what I'm going to do. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this tiny blade. So these blades were ones that I was thinking of stocking in the store, but it turned out they were so much more expensive, and you can get these standard ones, these thick ones with the holes or without, really cheap online. Just jump on Amazon, grab a bunch. That's why I don't sell them in the store. If they were being way too overpriced elsewhere, then sure, I'd chuck them up on the royserocks.com store, but the store's specifically designed to just sell all the items that are too expensive everywhere else. And these are cheap enough already, so just go out and grab a bunch. These ones, on the other hand, were much more expensive, and if you look on the side with the macro lens, you can see that you can almost get like 3 or 4 of these blades just to one of these. It is incredibly thin, and if I just give it a little push here, you can see how flexible it is. It's literally like, it's not paper. You couldn't scrunch it up, but you could easily fold this back on itself, and it's quite springy, so hopefully it doesn't deform too much. I haven't used these blades a lot. I've used a couple and they haven't really deformed on me, but these are super thin blades. There are multiple ways of doing this. So because you're holding it and you're cutting these little slices, you don't want to put too much pressure pinching them together, because once you get close to the end of that slice, you're going to pinch it back up against your blade. So a lot of the time, what I'll do is I don't have any at the moment, but I did show it on the channel attempting to dot with it in the past, is a epoxy putty. And you can epoxy putty onto the back side, let it harden, let it solidify, and then cut those slices. The pieces won't move at all. And then you can just grind that epoxy off at the end, the epoxy putty. Most of it just picks off. Other thing you can use is dopping wax. Dopping wax will also do the same thing. That's how you load the stones up on a triplet slicer as well. And one that I've heard other people use that I haven't actually tried myself is simply just blue tack. So if I give that thing a little bit of a dry, it'll give the blue tack a chance to hold it. If it's too wet, it'll just fly straight off. So I can just mount it like this in just a piece of blue tack. We'll submerge it in water and we'll just see if we can get a couple slices going across here. Maybe I'll just slice in the middle first and then just see if I'm wanting to slice into 3s or just into quarters. But I'm willing to give this a shot. People have said it works well. As you can see, I left it a little bit too wet, so if I just slide it around, you can see there it doesn't grip on too well. So let me dry the stone, let me mount it, and then we'll get the slicing blade out and let's get to slicing, see what we end up with. Well, ladies and gentlemen, would you look at that? Super thin cuts. I could have done actually way more than this. I could have made these slices way thinner. And I get sent a lot of good ideas by email from a lot of you, but to be honest, this one, I had my doubts. I thought blue tack, it's pretty terrible underwater. It's a very weak hold. It's very soft. So I didn't think it would work all that well, but to be honest, this worked perfectly well. I mean, I think I still would have liked a bit more of a rigid hold, and the blue tack now feels a little bit tackier than usual. At least more than it did when it was starting out, but it didn't hinder the blade. You can see how thin this blade is. It was slicing through very narrow amounts of opal. So we lost next to nothing almost. And if you have a look, all those slices, easy cut through. If I just grab one of the small ones, they're super thin. So if I grab this little one out of the middle here and try to clean off some of the blue tack, it's dry, so I'll just chuck a drop of water on it. We should end up with some nice little slivers here that we could use in some inlay work. Here it is, chucking it on a bit of a black surface. All I'll do is I'll trim up this little potch backing, and we should have a nice little line of blue crystal. Super cool. Would be absolutely perfect for a lot of jewelry, inlay jewelry stuff. So you know what? We've gone from a stone that was super disappointing to something that I think now I can use. Because that's just one slice. I managed to cut like 6 slices out of this thing. See, from the top, just about nothing. The side is where the color was, and once you chuck a black backing behind it, it actually looks really nice. I hope that gives you guys a little bit of hope when you start coming across these terrible stones. I mean, I was pretty down in the dumps when I first cut this stone, but now that I've sliced it up and had a look at the sides, it's actually really nice inlay material, and we should be able to do something with it later. Yeah, here I've just chucked in a little puddle on the cutting mat, and you can still see the chunks of blue tack, but once I get them on those sides, they are actually a really nice dark purple, dark blue crystal. This one, the end cut, has a little bit of red in it. If we have a look at this ring, like you'll get a similar effect to this. These are actually a little bit cleaner than that crystal, so it will come up even better. Once I've set it in something like this with that black epoxy gluing them in place, we should end up with decent stuff. Super happy considering how negative I felt about this stone. The side shot is actually really good, and this is actually something I do not really with Lightning Ridge very often, but I have done it with a lot of Mintaby stuff. Sometimes you just got to settle for that side shot. I did a video where I showed you how to cheat and check the color bars a little bit, and if those tests fail, you can always just go and cut from the side, because from the front on, look at that. This one's an absolute dud. Rotate 90 degrees. What a winner. So you learn something every day. Turns out blue tack can hold a stone underwater pretty well enough to do really thin little micro slices like this. And of course it helps to use a blade that is the thickness of a piece of paper. It's yeah, it is pretty flexible, so you've got to be a bit careful there to get the straight cuts, but it's not that hard. It's still metal. It's still not flexing super soft, and these stones are quite soft. If you're cutting a harder piece of rock, maybe like a fire agate, this blade will really struggle, but for something soft like opal, it's perfectly fine. I'll have to rethink stocking these in the store, just because I know that these super paper thin ones are much harder to get. Look at that, the camera can barely even focus on it properly. So I'll think about that. I'll think about restocking these. Let me know in the comments if I should do it or not, or whether you guys can find them easily online. I think from memory, these are 0.1 or 0.15 millimeters thick. So yeah, barely exist. And surprisingly, not that cheap to stock and get manufactured, which is why I avoided it, because you can get those thicker ones for next to nothing. These ones you pay a little bit of a premium on because of how thin it is. Anyway, enough of that. I'll set these aside and you'll see them back on the channel at some point when I try to do some inlay stuff. I'm still trying to do my silversmithing bezel setting more than I am inlay work, but inlay work is a little bit easier, so maybe I'll take a break from that and get onto this. Either way, you'll see it in the near future, and I'll catch you guys around.